The recent invasion of Afghanistan by U.S. and allied military forces was the longest war of the U.S. war history. As U.S. forces vacated the Bagram Air Base suddenly and without any proper handing taking over to Afghan forces or authorities. The news has come as a big surprise for the whole world. While vacating, stuff valued, if not $1 billion at least millions of dollars was left on the airbase. Besides ammunition and weapons, it includes vehicles and number of other articles which were required to meet the needs of operations. Even Afghan authorities were informed after 2 hours. There are many questions which demand a concrete answers. However, above all, during this 20 years long US-led occupation of Afghanistan, one must ask whether any of the occupants achieved their objectives for which they spent trillions of dollars. Welcome to the new view log of Fact Punch. We request our viewers to comment and share if you have some additional information that is worthy enough to be shared here. Thanks. Due to the numerous bases of U.S. forces around the world, the U.S. economy was already under tremendous stress, but a never-ending war in Afghanistan brought more turbulence. Let alone if there is any significant achievement if they made during 20 years of war. U.S. forces are leaving country at the hand of Talibans as they are claiming their occupation on 85% of country's area. The same group for which U.S. invaded Afghanistan to defeat and eradicate. However, at the one end U.S. drain the precious taxpayer money on a futile war, while at the other end there is another country which invested millions of dollars in the name of assistance to Afghanistan and badged the title of biggest regional donor. This investment under the caption of assistance was made to achieve its objectives. Fact Punch team will present the facts before viewers. This is our viewers' job to decide who achieved what and remained successful or unsuccessful. Yes, we are talking about India. According to a few reports, the Indian investment with the threshold of $1.2 to $1.3 billion yearly reaches to around 25 to 27 million US dollars or even more in 20 years. However, in comparison to the US spending, which according to Watson Institute at Brown University USA, reaches around $2.4 trillion, Indian investment sounds like peanuts. However, this is not the case. In fact, Indian investment of even $1 billion is much bigger money for the country like India, where the population almost 400 million is living below the poverty line according to various reports from international agencies and international banks, while people are dying due to living in unhygienic conditions and food insecurity. Prostitution is becoming massively adopted profession for Indian girls to earn livelihood. Slums in every city are on the rise. Most of the population is living with no access to basic toilets. Unfortunately, recent pandemic has also hurt India so badly that added more poverty, from which Indians struggled hard to lift out the population. What Indians did for Afghanistan was a far greater job for them. Apparently, Indians remained engaged in construction of government buildings, schools and hospitals, and also financing these institutions. Constructions of various power generating and distribution infrastructure development projects like dams and establishment of electricity transmission lines. The establishment of the Afghan National Agricultural Sciences and Technology University and Cricket Stadium in Kandahar. Upgrading the telephone exchanges in many provinces. Expanding the national television network across country. Numerous clean drinking water projects. These are the few we have mentioned. During an event in the U.S., November 2019, Indian ambassador to the U.S., Harshvardhan Shringla said, India has played an active role in the reconstruction and development of Afghanistan since 2001. India has completed 407 infrastructure projects in this war-torn country and another 150 were underway, he said. All of the Indian projects were undertaken in partnership with the Afghan government and are spread across each and every provinces of Afghanistan in the diverse fields of development, including education, healthcare, infrastructure, administrative capacity, flood control, irrigation, agriculture, sports. According to the various report, almost over 65,000 students were offered admission with scholarships in Indian universities. During 20 years of war, other donations in the former food grains and winter supplies to Afghanistan, coupled with Indian efforts for international lobbying and hiring journalists in the West to shout out pro-Indian stories in international press, could not be estimated and makes another huge sum. Moreover, this doesn't include investments made by Indian corporate sector. The list is way too long if we mention all of them. In short, Indian assistance to Afghanistan till 2012 jumped over $13 billion. However, Indian officials mention just $3 billion whenever they have to talk about their assistance to Afghanistan. Main reasons of hiding this information is to reduce criticism and to suppress the uproar in general masses. Secondly, a bigger portion was spent in running terror campaign alongside eastern border. The money which cannot be mentioned. In a statement which appeared in Al Jazeera newspaper November 16, 2020, from Pakistan's military said, India is involved in training, harboring and launching terrorists from 87 training camps, 66 camps inside Afghanistan while 21 in India. Coming ahead down the line with Indian aid to Afghanistan, there are some interesting questions which pop up here. The top question in all is, while India stands on number 1 in the list of receiving donation from the world, which amounts to $4.2 billion, while Japan being the major donor to India. Dear viewers, there is no complex equations to solve here when one country has problems to solve at home and is begging for foreign donations in the first place. That country should spend its own money at home, but in contrast India is spending its taxpayers' money on Afghanistan. Why not? Indian government is spending this money to get their people out of poverty or to make certain development inside India, which government is supposed to do. An interesting food for thought. Next questions comes as to why a country would spend a huge amount of money in assistance to a Muslim state while Muslim nationals, living in their own country, are being subjected to state-driven brutalities. Not only Kashmir is the headline of Indian atrocities. The Indian Muslims are suffering from traumatic life in India. Not going farther, just consider the recent riots which sparked during the former US President, Donald Trump, due to his pro-Pakistan statement. Every Muslim and their mosques became the target of extremist Hindus. The news were reported globally. On the top of that, Indian Parliament passed the bill according to which citizenship of Indian Muslims could be stripped off. Why a pro-RSS cum Nazi government of India would help a Muslim state when they don't tolerate Indian-born Muslims to stay their nationals. If we go back to 1979, when the former USSR invaded Afghanistan, the same India was supporting USSR. Now what has changed Indians' behavior? Certainly there is no other debate that there has been certain Indian interests in Afghanistan, and not surprisingly, most of them were against Pakistan as well as to establish Indian hegemony in the region against China. Though, it sounds ridiculous given the poor condition of Indian economy and the factors already discussed. Let's have a brief look at Indian interests in Afghanistan. For Indians to access the Central Asian energy sector was important since the fall of USSR. India was looking Afghanistan as a base to counter China's growing influence in Central Asian economic and energy sectors. To undermine strategic importance of Pakistan's flagship project, the CPAC. For decades, Afghanistan appeared to be potential market for Indian goods, and the bilateral trade between the two has been on the rise. To ensure Indian presence and influence in any oil-gas pipeline project which runs through Afghanistan's territory to Pakistan. To control and influence on common Afghans with a view to winning friendship and political support against Pakistan, also to marginalized Pakistan in Afghanistan. Deny Pakistan any political, strategic, or economic influence on Afghan government and masses. To maintain maximum presence of Indians in all sectors of Afghanistan, particularly the regional security and economic establishments. To work out and bring in a pro in the Afghan government whenever there is a change of power. To establish a counter-front against Chinese political and economic ingress in Central Asian region. To establish more terrorist training camps alongside Pakistani border and to start a proxy war at a much higher threshold in Pakistan and destabilize the country, especially in the Baluchistan and KPK provinces, moreover driving things to finally dividing Pakistan into 2 or 3 pieces. To establish a military base could be used in case there is a war between India and Pakistan, hence having capability to attack Pakistan from western border as well. Now it's important to discuss the strategy that was adapted. Indians smartly resorted to soft power as a tool of foreign policy. With the end of Taliban era in Afghanistan, India has been active in more fronts than Pakistan. Having already closer ties with the former Northern Alliance members, Indian development projects in humanitarian aid changed the public perception regarding Indian nefarious design in Afghanistan to a considerable extent and time. Though such investments, Indian got leverage and managed to get close to the people of Afghanistan culturally. There have been Indians inside many important government offices like ministries to oversee, influence and pursue various Indian interests. Just take the example Delaram-Zaranjan Road, which was strategically important for India. Doing so, they connected the border town of Zanjan to the city of Delaram, thereby establishing communications between the country's biggest cities. Afghanistan was dependent on Pakistan for transit of goods since decades. To boost its own trade and to weaken the Afghanistan's dependency on Pakistan, India created another route. The construction of the road was financed, completed and partially protected by Indians. India put forth its support for construction of another dam project that may result in stopping more Kabul River water, reducing it to flowing downstream to Pakistan. It was speculated that Indians will develop strong foothold during the stay of Allied forces and become part of Afghanistan politics to influence and to use Afghanistan soil and resources against Pakistan and China. The fact could not be denied that Indians remained successful in doing so to a certain extent and time. India was operating many consulates and private undercover offices in the bordering cities close to Pakistan. Apparently these office and consulates were engaged in development projects. Needless to mention, these men to act as remote offices to conduct covert operations of Indian intelligence agency. Their activities were centered to hire, train and launching terrorist groups inside Pakistan. Indian forces were brought to Afghanistan under the excuse to protect the Indians working in Afghanistan and for the training of Afghan forces, but the majority of forces were deployed along the border line of Pakistan. Most important is the fact that on these lines, Indians were facilitated to bring raw personnel under the guise of working staff and experts to manage the development project as well as diplomatic staff. It would be too casual to say that US government was not in the picture. However, that paved the way for Indian presence, and to work out their nefarious design to destabilize Pakistan. It's of no secret that such investments by Indian have been in line since 1950. Many proxy groups were created and trained inside Afghanistan by Indians to create turmoil in Pakistan's major cities. The names of such groups include Baluchistan Liberation Army, the Baluchistan Rebel Army and Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Moreover, Indians put utmost efforts to launch ISIS in Pakistan. Indian Chief Security Advisor Ajit Doval visited Iraq and caught negotiating with ISIS. It was brought into the notice of international community. The attack on Army Public School in Peshawar was also planned from Afghan soil by Indian-trained group. According to recent news, coming from various sources which also include Afghan official statements, Talibans are gaining control on larger area of Afghanistan. Talibans claim to have control 85% of Afghanistan, but if we consider the report being aired in the international media and Afghan official statements, if not 85%, 70% of the area has fallen under the control of Taliban. Border areas remained priority for Taliban, of which they took control first. Now what's on the table for India as US has withdrawn its forces? with each new day advancements made by Talibans. Let's review their objectives, whether they have achieved anything considerable against the value of their spending during last 20 years. Chabahar Port, as Indian and Afghan authorities reported previously that number of container have been sent via Chabahar Port of Iran. Trade between the two countries boosted up to $1 billion, but in the wake of rapidly changing political canvas after the peace deal between US and Taliban, India stopped the funding to upgrade the port infrastructure which was previously agreed with the Iranian government. Since it's clearly visible that Taliban are gaining control and it will be futile to spend more money on this project. Another reason that took Chabahar project down the hill was the hefty investment of around $400 has been announced by China for Iran in next 25 years. China would never like to undermine its very own and already in progress project the CPAC in Pakistan. Destabilizing and dividing Pakistan, for almost over 10 years Pakistan suffered heavy losses, the lives of its citizen and forces as well as in economy, but as we see it's still standing intact while terrorism has come to a halt. Indian proxies has been actively followed and neutralized while the area under their control has been recovered. Life is back to normal. Suppressing Pakistan's influence in Afghanistan, Pakistan remained on forefront to bring both the parties on negotiation table, the Talibans and US government, to seek a peaceful and long-term solution. Needless to say, Pakistan was leading the peace process between US and Taliban, while India was requesting US to make India part of the process, which presented no logic for both the parties. On the other hand, US was asking for help of Pakistan for the secure and smooth withdrawal of its forces and logistics support for the US military hardware installed in Afghanistan. US had no choice other than to comply with what Pakistan is demanding in return. This resulted in ousting of India from the entire peace process completely. This is where Pakistan completely destroyed Indian diplomacy. First, India teamed up with Ashraf Ghani's government, tried their level best to prolong the Allied forces' stay to unlimited extent, which of course was not the option before US. While finding no luck, Indians resorted to their usual dirty tactics. India tried to sabotage peace deal via its lobbying and touts inside Afghan government, coupled with its covert operation, launching terrorist attacks against innocent Afghan civilians to blame on Talibans. However, these efforts also went down the drain. As we see today, India remained unsuccessful as the whole stage is set contrary to Indian interests. The Indian policy makers and government are listening the music from critics at home who are dashing Indian policies, which resulted in loss of precious amount of money, resources, time, and efforts which otherwise could have been spent to achieve something valuable for the country in nation India. Besides, India has also lost its reputation and influence on many international fronts, as the Indian insurgency and their terror wars have been exposed by many in the West as well. With no foothold in Afghanistan, India won't be able to make any further advancement to achieve whatever they were dreaming since long. With no influence inside, government won't be able to harbor terrorism across borders in coming days. If Pakistan, China, Russia, and Iran managed to achieve long-term peace in Afghanistan, the only peace issue in the region will be left is Kashmir, which will become center of focus for the international community. India is completely out of the internal politics of Afghanistan and won't be able to influence any of the parties, since it could be easily speculated that upcoming government may have large majority of Taliban who don't see India as their friend. Though India is also trying hard to have some sort of dialogues with Taliban, but so far there have been no green signal to initiate talks on any matter from Taliban. This situation has further deteriorated Indian standing in Afghanistan. On July 11, as Taliban made advancement towards Kandahar, Indian diplomatic missions has closed down, its consulate staff have been evacuated, while Herat and Jalalabad consulates are already closed. It has also been noticed that two C-17 aircraft of IAF offloaded the 122mm cannon ammunition while these aircraft were supposed to take the Indian diplomatic staff back to India. No wonders, this has also come to the notice of Talibans. At one hand, India is seeking dialogues with Talibans and at the other hand supplying ammunition and weapon to be used against Taliban. In a nutshell, as the US is leaving Afghanistan empty-handed, India also has nothing on the table after losing a huge fortune. There is only failure to welcome them back home. Dear viewers, we leave it to you to decide who won this 2-decade-long war. Do leave your opinion in the comments below. We will be back soon with more updates and information. We hope you will have found our vlog of great information. We would love to have information from you as well about this subject. Please do comment to share and don't forget to subscribe our channel.